Welcome back to the Scorekeepers. I'm your host, Daniel Farrell. And on this episode, I'll be speaking with MT Shorts co-founders, Kamp and Sarah Ellis. MT Shorts is a creative platform that combines musical theater with short film, creating short-form musical content, highlighting many of today's up-and-coming composers, songwriters, actors, dancers, and many more. We'll get to hear about how they developed MT Shorts and created their project, High School Zoomsical, the musical, a film created completely remote during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the Scorekeepers. Greg, Sarah, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Woohoo. Yeah.
I was hoping we could start with a little bit about yourselves, an introduction, and just tell us about MT Shorts.
I feel like Greg is really good at this one. I'm gonna pass the baton to you, Greg.
Sure thing. Well, my name is Greg Kamp, and I am joined by my illustrious, one-of-a-kind superstar co-producer and founder of MT Shorts, Sarah Ellis, and we
Too kind, sir.
we created this production company a couple years ago that specializes or focuses on the intersection of musical theater and short film. And we've been really lucky enough over the last couple of years to produce some incredible short films, and it really was birthed out of this recognition or this acknowledgement that we had all of these incredible friends who were beyond talented, but for one reason or another, just weren't getting sort of the hype or the recognition around their work that they so were deserving of. And Sarah came to me and she said, I want to create space for our friends. How about we do a concert series of new works and new composers? And I kindly shot her down, only because I had done it before, and I knew how much work went into producing a one-night concert. Not that there's anything wrong with it; they're so beyond valuable, but it takes a ton of effort to put together a one-night event that is fleeting. And for these composers and writers who were pouring all of this time and energy into it, the best thing that they were getting out of the experience were these, crappy YouTube videos where the wait staff was walking in front of the camera, or the actors, God bless them, were forgetting their lines or lyrics or saying, the wrong melody or something. And it just didn't feel like an accurate representation of the work that was being produced. And so instead of creating a new concert series, we put our brains together to create something new. And the idea that was birthed out of that was musical theater short films. So I don't know if I missed anything, Sarah, but I'd love for you to jump in. And
Greg, it was totally Greg's idea, by the way. I have to give him the credit. Greg was like, no, Sarah, we're doing film. Like, it was definitely more like Greg wants to do, he's like, I've never really dipped my toes too much into the TV film world. And I really want to start producing in that field. And I had no experience at the time in making movies. And I said yes, foolishly and brilliantly. And then we, just made our first film, and things just kind of happened from there. We got so lucky. Our first maiden film, we worked with the right collaborators and the right people, and they really taught us a lot. And we've gone on to really make some movie musical magic, and have really gotten to share some of these composers' work.
It's absolutely crazy that you said that you hadn't dabbled in film or TV up until that point with that first film.
Yeah, not at all.
I mean, you guys have really struck gold. I think your stuff is really phenomenal for not. Greg, did you have any film or TV experience, or were you likewise coming in sort of blind?
No, never behind the camera. I'd done some TV shows as an actor, and I was producing big concert events and musicals and shows and whatnot. So yeah, it was kind of a really great excuse to sort of delve into something new. And it was a beautiful thing, Sarah and I not knowing what we didn't know, because we joke about this pretty often. I think had we known what we were getting ourselves into, we probably wouldn't have started to begin with. And it was sort of just that like blissful ignorance, jumping in and sort of figuring it out as we went. And I'm so glad it happened that way. And in a lot of ways, continues to happen as we grow and build vision.
I mean, it's such an interesting sort of niche that you've kind of created with the short form musicals. I feel like the majority of people, when they think of short form kind of musical content in a visual sense, are thinking along the lines of music videos or something like that for,
totally
like popular music. But I think this taking musicals like in the traditional musical theater and putting them into a short form, I don't know anybody else that kind of does that. It was amazing to see the first couple of shorts that you guys put out.
Thank you. Yeah, we did a lot of poking around when we first came up with the idea, and there's definitely examples out there, but compared to the larger scope of what people were producing, it just was a microcosm of a footprint. And again, the reason why we did it is because we felt that we saw all of this enthusiasm for music being on film. It was the height of all the live broadcasts with Rent and Jesus Christ Superstar and Grease live and everything, and Glee and just all these Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and whatnot, and Greatest Showman. And we sort of just recognized that unless you were very small group of people, you weren't really being given the opportunity to experiment writing musicals for film. And so that was another reason why we started MT Shorts, is we wanted to give not only composers, but directors and choreographers and producers and sound editors and performers to actually really experiment with what it's like to create musicals in this format, and try and take out some of the risk that's involved with mounting a huge film production of sorts.
Yeah, for sure. Taking it out of the live element is so different. It plays completely different strengths when you add it in front of a camera. Were you going to add something there, Sarah?
I was going to say a big part of the inspiration for MT Shorts, I think, was Disney Pixar short films, because
I love those.
We grew up kind of watching those beautiful like micro stories, right? They were very fully developed and told so brilliantly in a very short amount of time. So we kind of thought of MT Shorts as like, okay, when we envisioned what this was going to be, we were like, oh, maybe it's like the Pixar short before the big Broadway musical, or like it's the little amuse-bouche of an up-and-coming writer before, a Glee or a Smash or The Greatest Showman kind of idea. So that was a big part of the vision when we first started toying with this idea.
What do you guys think are some of the creative challenges involved in doing short form musical content, of taking, what is normally a very long production? I mean, most musicals are 3 hours, what are some of the creative challenges of taking that and chunking it down to, 10, 20 minutes?
I think one of the coolest challenges is, in film, it's another thing to introduce the audience to as a storytelling device. And there's different ways to do it depending on the genre or the style of the musicality, but finding a way into the musical element, I think, is really unique and special, and takes, a keen understanding of figuring out, it's a very delicate balance, that way into the sort of musical element and how you use it to your advantage in something like film. in film, it goes both ways too. You know, there's so many things that you can do on camera that you can't do in the theater. You know, you can't all of a sudden jump from a living room to a bar setting in a matter of seconds, or you can't, you know, sing about a flashback of, you know, a life of memories and be able to like actually see those memories like play out one after the other. And so that's been kind of the coolest challenge, is figuring out how do we take this musical stylization and play to the film's strengths, or the use of film strengths.
Yeah, definitely. I remember on Still Here, I loved your guys' use of editing as a storytelling device, you know, with the music. You know, like you said, you can do flashbacks and changing locales and time periods like very quickly, which, you know, you can kind of do on stage, but is much more difficult. And it's so much easier to show that, you know, that's something film, just non-linear stuff in film, it's their bread and butter. It's so easy to do.
For sure.
It's
I
so
also
effective.
think, especially in short film, it's really a challenge and really fun to kind of get the exposition immediately, like get it, introduce the idea so quickly, which is a challenge I think in theater sometimes, is you have to like create, like there's always an opening number or there's something that kind of puts you in the world, like Greg was saying. But for on camera, you can just tell a story by like, you know, showing a ring on a table, right? Okay, there's something that have to do with marriage, or like, you know, and a lot of there's such a visual medium that we get to play with. Whereas, and I feel like in theater, there's just a lot more moving parts and moving pieces to start to get to the meat and potatoes of the piece. I love that we can kind of fold our knowledge of musical theater and musical theater structure and kind of warp it into this new medium and really truncate it in this way. So it's all these different mediums combined. It's just a big mixing bowl, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it was great working on Still Here with you guys, and just, you know, I thought that was a project really screamed professional, and it was just such a cool melding of music and film. You know, it was a really strong short film and also a really great musical, you know, at the same time. And I think that was
Thanks,
just a really
Daniel.
cool melding of the two. But I wanted to bring you no problem. I wanted to bring you guys on to talk about your High School Zoomsical, the musical, which is
Isn't it
just
so fun to say?
I love the name, but it's so good. It was such a pleasure to watch, and you know, it's such a cool project for you guys to do during the pandemic and the whole remote aspect of it. I loved all the name jokes throughout the Rogers Hammers. And my favorite one was the girl said that her junior and senior prom dates ended up marrying, and he goes, "Oh, Lynn and Manuel."
We had
That was the neatest laugh that
we
was.
recruited a really good friend of mine who is brilliant and hilarious, Drew Fornarola, who brought so much to the vision of High School Zoomsical, and it's just oozing with goodies. You know, like you said, we at the height of the pandemic, right at the beginning of it, when everything was shut down, we really felt a need to create with our community. And you know, we didn't want to do something. We knew we wanted to address the pandemic, but we wanted to address it in a way that was going to lift people's spirits and to make them laugh and smile and serve as a love letter to our theater community. And so any chance we got, we would just throw in an Easter egg or two or three, or literally, I think there's over 100 Easter eggs in there. I was talking.
So many.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know. I
I
probably
was talking
never
to our
caught them
director
all.
today, and I was like, man, we really need to roll out like a social media campaign of some sort of like competition of seeing who can catch all of the Easter eggs, because there are so many I forget that they exist.
Where did this idea come from? You know, can you guys walk us through the creation of that
That's
whole
Greg.
project?
Greg called me with an idea pretty much like a few weeks after, you know, Broadway shut down in like mid-March. And said, we need to do something. I have an idea and I think it's going to work. And he's like, I'll call you back. And then like he called me again and he was like, I got it. Okay. A high school reunion gets moved online. And that was kind of like the whole idea behind it. It was just like, that was the general premise. And we knew that we wanted to do something that was all screen capture. So it had to be obviously all remote to keep everyone safe. The whole idea was that we would watch the whole musical like from the first person perspective of someone's computer screen. So we were watching their cursor kind of like go throughout their, their existence in this from this point of view. And then we roped the brilliant Jess Ryan, director, producer extraordinaire, into she calls herself a theater tech evangelist. If that means anything, that's pretty much says it all. And she helped craft technically what we could and couldn't do in the world that we were starting to create. And then we roped in Drew Fornarola. And then we roped in our friend Jeremy, who was a brilliant music director. And he actually recorded all the vocals. We did all the vocals remotely on Zencaster, actually. So we used this platform, which was crazy. Yes, it was awesome. And what else, Greg? And then we asked like 50 of our friends to reserve 2 days over a weekend and hop onto Zoom. And if they wanted to maybe also record themselves in QuickTime or another video platforms, we had a bunch of coverage. And then we just like played on camera. We had a shot list and we kind of repurposed Zoom as our film set, as it were. We put people into breakout rooms and then would shoot. We had like 10 different computers shooting the grid. And then we had people shooting themselves. And Greg got to deal with all the footage. He got all the footage sent to him via WeTransfer, and he had to download it all and organize it all and send it to our brilliant editors, Eric Bacchus and Aaron Milas. And yeah.
That must have been an undertaking. I know watching it, I was amazed at the sheer number of people that were involved in it. It sounds like quite the collaborative. It was amazing.
And project. In casting the thing, all we did was ask, the test was, are they a homie? And if so, they're in. Like, it was like, because we just, it was a really tough time. And our lead, Ryan Redmond, she was Olaf in Frozen. And our choreographer, Kate Bailey, was in Frozen as well. And they had just gotten a closing notice that Frozen would not be reopening. And then, we shot a couple days later. So our whole community was really grieving and mourning the loss of work for the summer. And so everyone was so game to play. And it was kind of before like Zoom became like our existence, right? So everyone was like, yeah, Zoom, what is Zoom? Like, cool, we'll get on, we'll hang out.
That's so surprising that you say, how early on this project was. Because I rewatched it recently and I was like, wow, that is like it was such like the jokes were just so on point with the pandemic, with the wine stuff. And it felt like something that had been written like way after the pandemic, like looking back, at our early days in Zoom. But that's crazy that it was done so early.
Exactly. Well,
on.
We look back at it and we're like, this is a timepiece. We make reference to Tiger King and like, who cares about Tiger King anymore? But when in March, April, May, we were all about Tiger King. So it's just so funny to see all these references and to be able to kind of look back on it as a moment in our lives where this kind of stuff happened. And we also have so much coverage. We really have to cut together some B-roll we had so many fun, like we just went nuts with all the conceits of how people were behaving on Zoom. Like we had a whole section of people that were like, okay, this is the home tour group where someone's going to give a tour of their house over Zoom. This is the tour this is the part where we're going to have, 5 or 6 dogs. And everyone's going to show their dog in the frame.
I was going to say,
all the things that like we were doing over Zoom, we wanted to capture.
And that's where the llama bit came in, is because someone, we were daydreaming about this film and someone was like, did you guys see that you can rent a llama to like Zoom into your corporate meetings or whatever? And then from that point, it just became like this running joke. We were like, well, there's going to be a llama. And then all of a sudden it became like the high school mascot of Rydell High. And then of course we got trolled on the internet because, you know, okay, backstory is we were trying to figure out how to get footage of this llama to include in the film. And I was down in Georgia at the time, staying with my folks. And my mom was like, oh, there's a farm right down the street that has llamas out all the time. Like, let's just go drive by and get some footage. So we literally, it was like Mission Impossible. We drove down to this farm, like not even 5 minutes from my parents' house. And I hopped out and got the footage, and it's in the film. And we, you know,
that's crazy. I thought that was like stock footage of a llama.
We went through so much stock footage before Greg learned that this llama farm exists.
But it gets better. But it
full-on guerrilla filmmaker
so
over here going to
build
record
this
his own
whole
llama.
like campaign. We like make this huge inside joke of llamas, and it's like on every social media post, this, that, and the other. And we post the film on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and someone comments, those are alpacas, not llamas. It's the most 2020 thing to happen.
Oh, God. That is, yeah, right.
Nonetheless, we had a great time. It was just, you know, a great group of people coming together, having a really good time during a really dark period. And when I look back on it, it's just nothing but happiness, that film.
Mm-hmm.
So besides the alpaca incident, can you guys talk about perhaps some of the challenges of creating a film totally remote? You know, maybe surprised if there's anything that was actually easier.
Actually, I found a lot of it easier. There was a lot of it. It was just different, but there was no location scouting. There was no craft services. There was no having to figure out like transportation of gear. It was easy to gather 50 people on Zoom and make a film. That was the easy part. The hard part was all of the tech and just figuring out how to do it. Because there's no rule book, you know. Even though we didn't know how to make a film, like we could pick up a book that was like your guide to making an indie film, and we could follow it step by step. And, you know, that's how we made our first film. It was like super easy. But making a film via Zoom in a global pandemic, there was just like no rule book to follow.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the technology hadn't really, you know, I remember it seems like big technological advances that were done in just a short amount of time, you know, based on needs. Like I know like orchestras and things like that, of being able to have like live, high fidelity, like low latency, low lag music so that people can rehearse together like via Zoom. And that was like not possible for like a long time. And it was done in such a short amount of time.
I mean, this film took a lot of creative problem solving. And again, that's where our director, Jess Ryan, who's just one of the tech savviest human beings I know, who came in and brought so much to the table. She's like, okay, we should record vocals on Zencaster. We're going to do all of the screen recordings on Loom. We're going to like use this program Airtable to track all of the footage and how it's done. And I never heard of Slack before, you know, a year ago, or Loom or Zoom even. And so it was, yeah, kind of like trial by fire and sort of making it up as we went. You know, I remember when we were filming, we went in with best intentions of how all the files were going to be processed and sent. And Sarah, God bless her, like spent all this time like creating these links that were
Bitly links,
so specific that we were going to drop in, and after each take people were going to relabel them and drop them in, and it was going to be like seamless and perfect. And after the first take,
tell you right now, that probably
after
didn't
the first
happen.
take, it totally
intentions of file stuff never
all
works.
of it went out the window, because I don't even remember what the issue was, but here we have 50
Something
people.
with Google Drive.
Something happened, tech that we couldn't figure out on the fly. And so, here we have 50 people. We're trying to get this shot in one day. And it's like, screw it. Just everyone at the end of the day, send it to me. Send me a WeTransfer, drop it in a Google Drive or a Dropbox and just send it to me. It doesn't need to be labeled. I don't care. Like, just get me the footage. I will deal with it. And that's what ended up taking so long for the film to get edited.
That's a lot of
and
work.
Just,
How many hours, Greg, do you think that you spent going through all of that Zoom and QuickTime footage?
I don't even want to know.
It has to be like multiple weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it took, and he had to sync up everything too. In addition to, labeling all these files and getting them in a place where, we were seeing enough people and everyone, there were 50 people, right? And we're truncating this story in like 12, 13 minutes. We had to make sure that everyone's seen at some point throughout the entire film. And Greg was literally like checking people off as he was putting footage into certain places. And like, this is crazy.
I mean, it did feel like an actual high school reunion, the number wise, I remember it started, I was like expecting just a few people to be involved. And I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so many people. And the credits just like, goes on and on. The amount of people involved. It's a good love letter to the Broadway.
That's what we wanted. That was the dream from the get-go. I was like, man, I just want to see like a page full of like people like doing simultaneous choreography and singing a musical theater song. Like, how awesome is that going to be during a pandemic? And it was awesome. It was also a headache on the back end, but so worth it. Not only was it just the organization of all the files and finding the right takes and syncing it up, but there was also a storytelling element that had to be taken into account. And so here I am with my Post-it notes. I have like my 20 squares and I'm like moving them around, trying to line up how like, this round robin of choreography affects this one. And then of course we have the main characters who are supposed to be like typing on the side and I need their reaction shots here and there. And it was a fun puzzle to figure out. And of course, I got to stare at my friends for however many hours. So that was a plus, but I don't.
He was technically in more Zoom meetings than any of us because he was just in the same Zoom meeting over and over.
Thankfully, the songs were super catchy. So I'd go to bed singing them.
They were very good. Do you guys think that there are more of these kind of unique stories that can only be told in this kind of remote setting that still have yet to be told?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I was just at a film festival in Iowa for High School Zoomsical, and we were in a block of shorts that were all made during quarantine, and someone had done a whole Dungeons and Dragons thing. Like they had like done
that's awesome.
Like they had used the software or they were using some gaming software to tell, instead of using Zoom, they used some sort of gaming software to like shoot this. And the whole idea of it was that there was people are coming from all their real lives and, the kids are working from home and this guy's trying to like focus on his D&D. And it was really cute, but it was, again, all shot remotely and from a computer screen, like the whole idea of it. So yeah, I'm sure. I mean, this is how we've been living for the past year. So like, of course, right. Everyone has a unique story to tell from their time during the pandemic.
It was very interesting to see initially when we got over the initial hump of the pandemic and people really started being creative again and making films and stuff. I feel like there was this initial like, how do I make what I was doing before now? And then people kind of realizing like that wasn't possible and adapting into these new kind of stories and new kind like that D&D that you mentioned and like Zoomsical, or it plays to the strengths of the technology and the situation.
And I mean, as to how we share music and experience live events. I mean, we premiered High School Zoomsical in this incredible virtual venue called All Together Now, that Jess Ryan is actually the creator of, and with her company Broadway Unlocked. And it really felt like a live experience. They've built a virtual venue. Probably, Greg, you can speak more to this because you're more experienced with it, but they have built this venue that actually feels like you are attending a live event, like with live chats and different breakout rooms and ways that feel like you're still engaged while there's like a live feed going on. You could go sit at your, quote unquote table and be into a room with a bunch of people that are just your peeps. And you can private chat with people all within this like software program. So there are really innovative ways that people are sharing music and dance and theater and live events in general.
Yeah, looking back, I'm super proud that we released the film that way, because filming it was one thing that brought our community together, and then releasing it through this virtual space was another thing. And I was so proud that some of the comments that we got back were like, this is the most like community I've felt like this whole pandemic. And that's a testament to, Jess and this company and technology in general, that it has the ability to bring us together like that. And it was really fun. Sarah did a really great job like recreating and reimagining the space. And we sort of built it out as if it was the halls of Rydell High. And so, we had different breakout rooms, and we had like a chemistry class, right? And we had a mixologist in there who was leading people through, a specialty cocktail. And we had a history class where we had musical theater trivia that people could pop in and out of. And, during the game or during the broadcast, we did a live broadcast into the premiere of the film. We had, musical theater Mad Libs, and it was a really fun night. We raised money for a really amazing organization called Fund for College Auditions. And yeah, I'm just, I'm looking back, I'm really proud that during this really difficult year, we have something that brought people happiness.
Yeah, definitely made them laugh.
Oh yeah, I laughed a lot. It was very funny. How are you guys going to be taking what you learned from Zoomsicle and the experience, both in a production sense and I guess also the release that you discussed, and how are you going to apply that to your in-person projects?
I know for me, as far as like the event side of thing, I know this doesn't really answer your question, but as part of MT Shorts, even with our earlier films, we always released the film. I know we said that we didn't want to do concerts, but we ended up producing concerts as well. So with our earlier films, we always produced a concert that coincided with the release of it that featured the writer's extended songbook. So it became like, instead of just a premiere, it became like a premiere concert party, which is really fun. And that's what we were trying to recreate in the virtual space. And I just, for High School Zoomsical, and I just know that moving forward, I think the hybrid nature of live and virtual events is going to be like so incredible. And that's what I'm super excited about with Broadway Unlocked. Is I feel like that level of accessibility of bringing people together can't go away. I think that is
right. We can't like gatekeep, all these. I remember all these events and concerts and things that are normally only accessible like in person in places like New York City. Now some teenager in the middle of Kansas can tune in and they can see those things. And I think it would, like you say, be a terrible backstep just in general for the industry if we gatekeep backwards and not allow those kind of things to exist anymore.
That's what I'm super excited to take away. As far as the film, I think the biggest takeaway, and this isn't anything against our other films whatsoever, but like Sarah said, we sort of checked in with each other and we were like, are they homie status? And that's not to say that people who aren't homie status don't have something to bring to the table or something to teach us or challenge us, but there was just something about that level of just like understanding and that level of trust and that level of comfort with people that made what could have been a really tedious, arduous process for High School Zoomsical feel like something you looked forward to at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. They always say you end up working with your friends, right? Like that's doesn't matter how great you are, you have to be friends.
Absolutely. And this was just like the biggest reminder of that. So I think, you know, as we continue to grow, it's just really like, remember your roots, or, you know, remember who your people are, and, you know that we couldn't and wouldn't want to do any work without them.
And lucky for us, our friends are stupidly talented, so it's great.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And you definitely got a lot of them, as we saw in the Zoomsical. I just love now to if there's any future plans you may have or projects in the works, maybe talk about those.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, but we're super excited. One of the biggest films that we've undertaken that we shot pre-pandemic, called Still Here, is about to start making the rounds in some festivals, fingers crossed. So Daniel brought so much to the table as our sound mixer and editor and Foley and really brought so much to the table with this film. And all of that work, really, I mean, we did meet in person, but it was like years before we worked together.
That was such like a strange, it really felt like so out of the blue. Like I was like, who are these people again? Oh, they did that musical theater short thing. Because we kind of met at this like, what is this, like an NYU?
It was this NYU symposium that Sarah and I were not supposed to be there.
You guys crashed hard there. It's like, what school are you from?
And then you guys like, oh my gosh.
And then out of the blue, like a year and a half later or whatever it was, get a call from you guys. Hey, can you do this project? It's crazy. I really appreciate it.
Totally. Keep those business
keep
cards,
in the back of your head somewhere, and because oh yes, for sure. I haven't actually printed any business cards for like a whole year. I'm gonna start printing them again for in-person things. So that's one thing about the pandemic is everybody saved money on business cards.
There's a plus. But this film, a lot of which the post-production was done during the pandemic, and so it's kind of been elongated, if you will, just by the nature of things. We're super excited that it's in its final stages and ready to be shared with the world. It's a beautiful, beautiful film, a beautiful score. And I think, coming out of this pandemic, it's really going to resonate with a lot of people. So yeah, I wish we had like a date to pitch the drop right now, but that'll be coming soon, and we'll do another big event release,
premiere party kind of thing. Release. Just now you mentioned it, just reflecting back on that film will, I think, impact a lot of people from the pandemic with loss and things like that.
It's funny. It's funny how things like grow into themselves or like change over time. I guess this isn't a new concept, that's but it's been a cool experience having this film as kind of a constant and revisiting it, every couple weeks as the process continues, and seeing how it's sort of aged into itself is really cool. And I think probably in a lot of ways, it's a blessing that we had to sort of take a pause on it to allow for it to sort of like sit and resonate and
Yes,
Exactly.
Like fine
That's
wine.
exactly what it's like.
definitely.
I knew people were into things aging into themselves.
But yeah, no, I agree with you, Greg. I think I'm a huge believer in, the art will be made when it should be made, and just kind of allowing yourself to kind of let the process kind of take you to. And we've kind of developed that philosophy for this because we obviously want to get this film out like as soon as possible. We just want to share it with so many people who are so excited about it. But we also recognize that it's not quite in the stage that we want it yet, or, we're just, and we know that when it's supposed to be released, it will be released. It's like, and the world will receive it as it does. Just kind of this like, I don't know, maybe just like that's a coping mechanism for 2020.
This is a very East Coast. This is such an East Coast mentality towards like art and stuff. The West Coasters are like, I need the release date and I need the money and I need it now. East Coast are like, the art will make itself.
I
So
love it.
New York. Well, it's been absolutely great speaking to you guys. I had a little note on here before we go, just for you guys to say what your favorite musical is. Maybe why.
It's always
as
going to
well.
be The Secret Garden. It's my forever favorite musical. I think the score is absolutely brilliant. I was obsessed with it as a child, like always wanted to play Mary Lennox. And my brother, we like did it. There was a community theater production that I did of it, and I played Rose. Hilariously, I was in high school with all these college kids, but my brother played Colin, and he was so, I can't even describe how perfect he was, but that musical will always be like, I don't know, something about the story of loss and love and dealing with grief, and the metaphor of a garden and flowers, and the cyclical nature of how life can go on even though you've suffered something, a great terrible loss, will just always resonate with me. And yeah, it will forever be my favorite musical, I think.
Good answer. I think mine changes depending on my mood, but
I think that's fair. I would say my favorite
Yeah.
film scores always
I
change.
think right now I'm like really feeling the answer being Rent,
Ooh.
which might be totally cliche, but I don't know. I just that it was such a big part of my like upbringing and love for musical theater, and I just love what that production stands for, and it's like accessibility and how the producers of I just love all the angles of that musical, not just what exists on stage, but behind the stage too, and how that musical really opened the door for more things, more people, different viewpoints to exist on stage. So yeah, I'm going with Rent right now. Seasons of Love, y'all.
What's your opinion of the movie version of that? Because I know a lot of people that really like the stage one are like, oh, I hate the movie one.
It's different. I think it has, I think what's interesting about the film is it's primarily the same cast, but just a lot older. So sort of going back, bringing it kind of like full circle is like, I feel like their performances and their relationship to the musical really like aged along with the musical. So in a lot of senses, it felt it was kind of different, I feel, than the stage musical, which is, maybe a little more angsty.
I agree with you, Greg. I agree. I totally agree with you. That is exactly, and no one's ever put it that way. So black and white for me before. I think that's why I struggle with the film, is exactly what you said. Yeah.
Speaking of film musicals, did you guys see that the new West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's like remake of West Side Story.
I'm
Looks
so
awesome.
excited.
Looks pretty good.
I'm also seeing In the Heights on
You are?
Sunday, which I am
Right? Oh yeah, I
beyond
totally
excited
forgot about
for.
that. I'm very excited to get back in the movie theaters in a couple weeks when I'm
It's
fully
gonna
vaccinated.
be my
to go
first
see In
time
the
in the
Heights and
theater.
so many other films.
I'm so happy I'm so happy this is the first movie. Like I'm such a movie buff. So I'm so excited that In the Heights is the first one that I'll get back into the theaters.
I'm really sad. The last movie I saw in movie theaters was Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm like, I picked the
Honestly,
not a great movie to go out
me
on.
too. Oh, that Jim Carrey.
That might be the last movie everybody saw in theaters is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Maybe that's why there's a pandemic.
I remember when the pandemic struck and all the movies were like canceled, everybody's like, so I guess Sonic is just winning like all the Oscars this year. It's like the only movie.
Wait,
that's
speaking of
came out.
movies, sorry, kind of going off on a tangent, but Daniel, have you seen Sound of Metal?
I haven't. I've pretty much not watched any of the Oscar nominees or anything from this year. I just fell off the movie, because I go to the movies to like go to the movies and like watch a movie, and that's like I'm in the zone to watch a movie, and I really like can't get in the headspace to do that on like Netflix. And also some movies that I'm like, I refuse to watch this on my like small 40-inch TV with that I don't have surround sound or anything. Like certain movies, like I haven't seen Tenet because I'm like, I'm gonna go see Tenet in IMAX. Like the way it was made to like be experienced is like how I'm going to go see it. So yeah, I haven't seen
the sound design and editing of The Sound of Metal is truly breathtaking. Like it was my favorite film of the year, and I think that had a lot to do with it. I just thought it was beyond so good.
Yeah, I don't remember who won.
I'm pretty sure they did
this year at the Oscars. This year they combined the two sound categories. There was sound editing and then like sound mixing for a long time. And almost every year it was the same film that won both. And people were like, just combine it. And then last year, when they announced that they were going to combine it the following year, it was two different films at once. Everybody's like, what? It's normally always one, and this year it's two. And now you're going
Daniel,
to
what is your favorite musical?
I don't think the average person.
I want to know now.
My favorite musical? Okay, so like full disclosure here, I was never really that musical of a person, not that musical of a person, but I was never into musicals, to that degree, like, other than what my high school and college like put on like live that I saw, I didn't really have any of that kind of exposure. But, since living in New York and obviously dating somebody who went through and is like a musical theater person and works in that and everything. So, I've seen several shows now. So actually like right before the pandemic, we saw Phantom of the Opera. We got free tickets from my girlfriend's work. And we saw Phantom like, I don't know, a week or two before they shut it down. We keep thinking we're like, there was definitely COVID in that audience. Like some like it was there. It was in that room. Like, when some old person coughed in, the middle of the ballad, like that was COVID. And, so that was amazing to see live because Phantom of the Opera, like, I'm not saying it's my favorite musical. I feel like I don't have enough of the literature to say like what is my favorite, but that music always holds a special place to me because in high school I played a Phantom of the Opera marching band show, and then in college we played like a musical theater night where we had a person who sang the like original Les Mis cast come in and like sing with us for like a Broadway night, and we played it. The Wind Ensemble played a lot of musical theater stuff, and we played a Phantom of the Opera sort of medley and stuff like that. So like that music is always it's always in my head constantly, and I feel like that music always holds a special place. We also saw Six, the it's like that musical show where it's like the six wives of Henry VIII. We saw that
wow
in around February, I think. That was like the early. It was before it was officially opened. It was just like the early showings. Again, we actually found out that we had gone and seen it on like I think a Friday night, and I remember reading later like the Saturday night, one of the ushers had tested positive for COVID. Like that was another one where I was like, there was COVID in that room. Like it's also just like amazing reflecting back, like, there's people on either sides of us, like wherever, but people were breathing on me and stuff. Like, I don't know, like going back, even vaccinated, going back to all these things that we used to do pre-COVID, especially in New York City. I feel like people never really understood the pandemic if they didn't live in New York City. We're constantly on top of each other, just like this close to each other.
I'm never going to be able to ride the subway again.
Leaning down right. It's going to be crazy to go back to see some shows. But I saw like a lot of Broadway shows have already announced that they're coming back. Phantom is coming back, I think, just to keep its reign of longest running show. I think 6 announced some dates, and
it was a good week for the theater industry.
Yeah, New York City had some fun as well for artists. They're doing like an arts, kind of like Roosevelt's like federal arts project, but like the city itself is doing it, like fund art projects and fun things like that. I think that was announced today or yesterday or something like that, like a citywide arts fund.
I read about it in the New York Times, and I was like, how do I apply for one of these grants?
That's always the thing. They're always like, we have all this money.
Yes.
Like, how do I get in here?
No, it's exciting. I'm really grateful. It feels like this country, in the midst of the pandemic, kind of recognized and stepped up to help support artists. And I think, as we emerge on the other side of it, there's going to be still a lot of grieving and a lot of having to process the trauma of what this past year has meant. And I think what's going to be one of the most, if not the most effective ways of doing that as a collective is gathering in actual spaces and experiencing theater and concerts and music and film, going back to the cinema and films and whatnot. I feel like that's going to be really important in our healing. And so I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, reflecting back, like it was also really nice to see that, I remember when, sports were like, we need to reopen. And I really appreciated that Broadway and a lot of the orchestras and a lot of the performing arts never really succumbed to the capitalistic pressure to reopen, and not in a safe way and put people in harm's way of the disease, and stuck to their guns and said, we're not reopening until it's safe to do it. I thought that was a good show of solidarity in the art world, that we're going to figure out different ways to do this, but we're not going to go back to the way it was until it's safe to do it. While so many other fields were just like at the races to try to immediately get back to the way it was, even if it meant people getting sick and stuff like that. You'd always hear about NBA players get sick, and then the whole team's sick, and it's just like, it was good to see that art world said no to that. Cool. Well, it was great speaking with you guys again and seeing you all and hearing what you guys were up to.
Oh, this was awesome.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Daniel.
It was great hearing from Greg and Sarah on this episode. You can check out all of their work on mtshorts.com. And go ahead and follow them on Instagram at mt_shorts. Again, that's mt_shorts on Instagram. To check out all of their cool content around High School Zoomsical and their upcoming film, Still Here. Thanks again for listening to The Scorekeepers. Please subscribe and rate and review us on the platform you listen to. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, just about anywhere else you can imagine. We would really appreciate a rating and review, as it helps us to beat the algorithm overlords and help new listeners find our show. And of course, all the great content from our guests. All of the links mentioned can be found in the description of this episode and on danielfarrell.com/scorekeepers. Again, thanks for listening. This has been The Scorekeepers.